Hello, Rico the Strat Wrestler back with you with another basic beginner guitar lesson. This time I want to talk a little bit more about learning rhythm and strumming and maybe even picking and switching chords and how to approach working on those things and practicing them. And maybe I'll reintroduce using the metronome, but go back and watch my videos about using the metronome to learn parts. I go over parts that might be a little advanced for beginners in those videos, but the concept of using the metronome, of starting slow and getting it smooth and then slowly speeding up, works with just about anything that you want to learn. So let's talk about your right hand and your rhythm and your picking. One good way to practice that is to just mute your strings with your left hand. Just let the neck comfortably fall into your hand and just kind of touch the strings with all your fingers so that it's muted like that. Sometimes in tablature they'll call that a rake. And just practice. Try to get smooth and slow. Make sure your wrist is loose and that you're not, squeezing your pick to death. And that you're not like, don't have a clenched fist. Don't be tight and stressed. Maybe, take some deep breaths, relax, maybe even stretch out. If you know how to stretch and loosen up your hands and your shoulders and everything, it might not be a bad idea. And just learn to and then you can get your metronome that's very slow, 60 beats a minute. You might have to start slower than this, and it's actually harder sometimes to lock in with a slow beat than a fast one, but it's really good practice. You got that going 60 beats a minute with a slightly different tone on the 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Maybe alternate downstroke and upstroke. And then when you get that nice and smooth, you can speed the metronome up slightly and do those faster, or you can go to a more complicated strum that has more strokes per beat, like eighth notes, which is 2 strokes per beat. You have a down and an up for each beat, so it'll be like down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up. Eighth notes help you feel that concept of downbeat and upbeat, because if you're doing it in time, you are strumming down on the downbeats and you're strumming up on the upbeats. Like this again. 2, 3, 4. Down, up, 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 down, up. And I would like to stress again, I'm going to turn my metronome off here for a little bit. Don't do these exercises for hours at a time every day. Do some fun exploration on your guitar and do this 5-10 minutes a day. But it's very focused, very disciplined and planned out practice with your metronome, so that you're going over these techniques and these ideas. I understand they're not very exciting. They're kind of boring, but these are building blocks to develop the skills and the feel in your right and left hands that will make it easier for you to learn more guitar later on. Now let's talk about learning how to switch chords and playing chords. And I'm going to use a D chord and an A7 chord. You can pick 2 chords that you know. If you just know one of the simple, like little one-note chords, so I've seen books show this as a C chord where you only play fret that first fret of the B string and you're just playing your G, B, and E strings. And then going to a G chord, which they're listing as these three strings. Which is the third fret on your high E string, and just playing your G, B, and D strings again. Those are some one finger, one note chords. If that's what you need to practice now, then do that. But I'm going to use the D and A7 chords. They're fairly simple chords that a lot of beginners learn early on. If you need to learn these, look up a diagram. Look up some videos about how to read those diagrams. They're basically telling you and showing you where to put your fingers and which fingers to put there. This D chord, you've got your first finger on the second fret on the G string, your third finger on the third fret on your B string, and your second finger on the second fret of the E string. Your A7 chord, you have your first finger on the second fret of the E string, you have an open G note, and then you have your second finger on the second fret of your B string and an open E note. And as a bass note, you use this open A note. So your A7 chord, and then back to that D chord, you use your D string as the low end root bass note. So ultimately, you'll want to practice strumming with the metronome, switching between the chords, but there's some things you can do to build that up. First of all, you need to understand that you only need to press down hard enough to fret the string. What I mean by that is that if you're pushing your finger down, when you first start pushing your finger down against the string, it just kind of mutes it and sounds kind of like this. And as you push it further, then you get a note. If you push further than that, then you start bending the string a little more and it'll actually alter the note. You can hear me pressing and then releasing. You don't want to press that hard, okay? You don't have to work that hard. And you want each of these strings to do that. You want to make sure that the fingers are only touching the strings that they need to touch to sound, because if you lean one of the fingers over too far and it touches one of the other strings, then it mutes it, like these two. If I lean over too far and this finger touches both strings, it'll partially mute that one. So you have to kind of switch around and get the right angle of your fingers. And then switching to the A7. Now, switching chords. I teach a little exaggerated technique as an exercise. And I would start switching back and forth between two chords and then add a third chord in as you learn it and switch alternating between all of them. But I pick up the fingers off of the fretboard, strum my D chord. Now I'm going to lift all the fingers and I'm going to hold them in the shape of the D, and then I'm going to change the shape meaning the position where my fingers need to go. I'm going to position them over the strings they need to go, and then I'm going to push them down together. And I actually didn't play that very well. Lift them up, move all your fingers in position like they're doing some kind of maneuvers or dance or something, where all of their feet need to come down together. All of the pads of your fingers need to come down together, and then push them all down together. Lift them up, put them back in position, and push them down. Lift them up, move them over, push them down. Not very exciting, is it? And you'll want to eventually start working with your metronome with it. Something like this when you're switching back and forth between chords. Let this. And I cannot stress enough, don't get a lot of tension in your picking hand. Don't get a lot of tension. Try to stay as loose as you can and as relaxed as you can and still achieve the desired fingering and effect. And breathe. Make sure you're breathing. It's hard to do this when you get all tense and impatient with yourself. So, practice that some and do some of the fun things. Hopefully you've learned a couple of fun things, even if they're silly, that you can play on your guitar, like, I don't know, whatever it is you've learned. Have some fun with your guitar. Take your guitar and go play some music.